if someone says to me, oh, my boss won't ever let me nap because he's, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, fuck your boss. Because, and the best thing that happened in the pandemic, as far as I'm concerned, is the Great Resignation. People started claiming their own time and renegotiating what their time means. A nap is actually a way to go to your boss and say, look, I can work for you and we've got a 9 to 5 grind, right? But I'll be honest, like I fall off in the afternoon. And honestly, boss, you fall off in the afternoon too. Because why? Humans fall off in the afternoon.
Right.
And if you want me to be a productive member of your team, I am going to take a nap at this time.
Scott has a project he's working on right now. And so anytime you're working on a book, I'm always interested in it. It's on a topic that is right in perfect alignment with what we do in this channel, especially when it comes to ultimately getting the most out of this life, and especially dealing with the issues of the conscious self, our issues of the unconscious mind, how these things work. So this is a book about, what is it? It's a book about napping, right?
It's a book about napping. Hell yeah. Yeah, it is a book about napping, guys. Yeah. There's a ton of really, really awesome books on sleep, but there's been a lot fewer, particularly on naps. So I'm using concepts from the Wedge. And I'm developing a new protocol, which I think is going to be bananas, but it doesn't have anything to do with bananas. It is going to be really, really interesting, sort of like combining the best parts of the placebo effect, the adherence effect, consciousness and cognitive behavioral therapy, along with a very, very common and cheap supplement that you can get anywhere that I think will alter the way we think about napping and how to get into it really quickly.
Have you found that there's some kind of something that, because I've been so envious. I'm like, how, there you are, you're asleep, and it takes me, forever to fall asleep. And yes. Yeah. Have you found anything to maybe expedite
that's
that?
Actually specifically what I'm working on. But there's two things I want to say. One, if you lie down and close your eyes and just sort of like let yourself drift off, you're still getting benefits of that sleep state. One of the things I was talking with Adam Horowitz over at MIT, who's a dream scientist, and he's amazing. Like I've fallen in love with this, like a man crush on this dude. Awesome. He is, what he said to me is like, you're dreaming all the time. Like, what do you think your awake state is? What is going on in your brain? I was like, whoa, man. Like,
tell me more, Scott.
It wasn't some psychedelic thing. It's like, when you are like fully alert, right? We make connections that are proximate. Okay. And so by this, what I mean is like, when you're focused on something, if I show you a cup, you might think tea, right? That's going to be your word association. Cup, tea, cup, cupboard, cup, ceramics, something like that. You're going to be like, direct between these two things. But as you drift off into sleep states, your the natural associations are no longer direct, right? So you might see cup and your brain might go walrus.
Interesting. Okay.
And this is a really, really important thing, because when we're hyper focused and we want to get something done, it's super useful to have like railroad vision. But when you go abstract and you rest, and in your dream states, dreams are wild. Like the other day I was eating tacos on a gondola and I woke up yelling not yelling, but like saying with the words, enjoy the tacos. And like, like this is a sort of like random, it seems random, but it's not a screensaver. What's actually happening is it's allowing, your brain is making predictions about the future, and it's trying to make these abstract connections in order to like form memories and form consciousness, form feelings. I asked, so this is a little bit of a digression, but I just thought it was so cool. Adam told me, I asked him, look, if dreams are so important, why can't you remember them? Okay.
Okay.
And he's like, yeah, that's really, really fascinating. Are memories important? He asked, because memories, and what is a memory? Like if you think back to like your childhood, right? You might have an image of your mother making macaroni and cheese for you, or your bedroom or something, but these are not actually crystal clear. They're actually gists. They're actually like your brain. If you collected every piece of information it would be too cluttered. So what actually happens is in the dream state, it takes out the most salient information, bonds all that information into a feeling, and your memory is actually a feeling. And the reason you do that is not because you're looking backwards in life, but memories are useful for actions you will take in the future. And feelings navigate you through the world.
Right.
For instance, you look at an ice bath, maybe someone here has taken an ice bath. The instinctual feeling, even today, for me, I've been here for 10 years doing this stuff. I'm still like, oh, no. Why do I have to be the ice bath guy? Like still. And that feeling is something you push against. That's what consciousness is for, right? Is to say, here's the feeling. Now I have the feeling. Now I can decide with my rational, focused mind. But it's this interplay between the two things. And you need sleep to form those feelings, to form those gists. And if you don't get it, and there's lots of different types of sleep problems that are out there, you start breaking down mentally. Your memory goes, this can lead to Alzheimer's, dementia late in life. Immune system cracks up, like you get cancer. I mean, you freaking fall apart when you're not sleeping well. Okay, so there's all of that. Now let me do the second half. Even if you just lie down, you get some of that, what they call hypnagogia. I don't know if it's Greek or Latin. Hypnagogia, right? Where
sounds Greek,
where you start making these more disparate connections. You're half dreaming, and with Salvador Dali, this is why I was dressed up as Salvador Dali, right? He would fall asleep with like a spoon or like an iron ball in his hand, like a big ball bearing, and as he would fall asleep, your hands relax, so your muscle tone goes out at some point. The ball would fall to the ground, it would wake him up, and then he'd wake up with these abstract ideas in his head. And that hypnagogic moment lasts for about 20 minutes to a half an hour, where you can be suddenly creative, where you are making naturally more abstract connections. So it actually could be a great hack for creative pursuits, more like fresh perspectives on things. And you can actually use the short nap as a tool. But let me tell you my protocol.
Let's hear it.
I've been hanging out with Adam Rodman, who's a doctor over at Harvard. He has a great podcast called Bedside Rounds, highly suggested, very nerdy, wonky, internist, doctory stuff. But he was telling me, in clinical trials, and we're working on a different project. We can talk about that next time. But he was telling me that in clinical trials, the placebo that most studies use is niacin or caffeine. And caffeine, we know what caffeine does. But niacin, I was like, well, why niacin? It's because it has something called a niacin flush. Where you get vasodilation in your face and your chest, you turn a little red, and there's some sensations associated with it, but it doesn't really do much more than that. It's just a flush. But because there's a sensation there, it makes people think they might be taking an active medication. And so they don't know what control arm they're in. It's the activeness, which is the interesting thing about niacin. And so I'm developing a sleep protocol to use the flush, to use niacin as like the unsupplement, right? It's not a supplement because it causes you to sleep. Okay. I mean, there are some sleep benefits, but let's even just put those totally aside. You're using niacin because you want the flush and you want to create an association with sleep. So when you're tired at night, I have you take niacin, and in 18 minutes, you will get the flush. That's just your biology, right? Take the pill, get the flush, have the sensation. Most people can fall asleep in about 15 minutes at night. That's pretty normal. Once you decide to close your eyes, that's about normal. So we can pair and time the flush with your sleep state. So you're in that hypnagogic moment when you have this flush, and then you fall asleep. Boom. So we're creating this association. We're creating what I call in the wedge an internal wedge, right? We're creating the wedge where the wedge is in where the thing that you're associating with is in your body, but we're actually linking it to the sleep state. Do that for a week. Now we have your brain is just, in that hypnagogic state, you're firing all these synapses together. You're creating new connections. This is one of the connections that just has to happen because maybe you've heard the word interoception. It was like looking inside and feeling your body. We've created an interoceptive sensation. Now, when you want to take a nap, we fast forward after you've been doing this for a week. After you trained yourself, I want to go take a nap in like 15 minutes, boom, take that, have the flush, lie down. And my assumption here, and I'm testing this, I need more data. I need participants. If your crowd wants to come in and help me with a niacin flush, let's go. Give me data. What should happen here is that it becomes a sleep trigger. So now it's not like you've taken a pill that puts you out. You've actually trained your brain to do this. And then eventually you can probably even work without the niacin if you wanted to, because you've sort of trained it. And there's some very deep research on this, with the adherence effect, with the placebo effect, with the sort of this cognitive behavioral training in general. But yeah, it's sort of like revolutionary and really, really fun to be playing in the napping space.
How would, just on a regular day, how would you recommend a person incorporate that? So
some of the, and now I've totally forgotten his name, but the most important sleep researcher at Stanford, he died in like 2007. But what he used to do, he'd be in the middle of teaching a class. He'd be like, sorry, guys, I got to go nap. And he'd leave the class to nap because he realized how important it was. And my feel, Teresa Hershey, right, just wrote this book called Rest is Resistance. And it's very much like, you have to rest. Grind culture is killing us. And the way our work environments are just toxic in general, and they make you stay alert past what is okay. And she links it to all the way back to the origins of slavery, where people are first becoming treated like cogs in the wheel. And her point is rest is resistance. Like, you rest and you are actually, it's an active state, not only mentally, but more importantly, at least for her, we're changing the culture. And my feeling is like, if someone says to me, oh, my boss won't ever let me nap because he's, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, fuck your boss. Because, and the best thing that happened in the pandemic, as far as I'm concerned, is the Great Resignation. People started claiming their own time and renegotiating what their time means. A nap is actually a way to go to your boss and say, look, I can work for you, and we've got a 9-to-5 grind, right? But I'll be honest, like, I fall off in the afternoon. And honestly, boss, you fall off in the afternoon too. Because why? Humans fall off in the afternoon.
Right.
And if you want me to be a productive member of your team, I am going to take a nap at this time. And if you want, and the way I negotiate, it's usually like, take it or leave it. And some people may have a different attitude here, but that's the way I feel. Like, self-care is so important, especially if you want to be productive. Like, if you want me to be an engaged worker, and actually create something that's really good, versus you just want to steal every moment of my consciousness and turn it into dollars. Like, I like that second person less.